All right, Unit 4, Video 3, Congressional Committees. All right, we have three main types of congressional committees. We have standing committees, joint committees, and then select, also known as special committees. Those two are the same thing. All right, so standing committees, a few things about them. They're the most important type of committee. The reason they're the most important type of committee is because that's where proposed bills are sent. So the first place that proposed bills go is they are sent to committee. And these are also permanent committees, so we've had them for a long time and we'll continue to have them. They aren't going anywhere. So for instance, we have committees that deal with taxes and foreign policy and judicial nominations. We've had those for decades, some of them for hundreds of years, a couple hundred years anyway, and they are permanent, not going anywhere. So they are the most important type of committee, and this is where the real work in Congress is done. Okay, the vast majority of work in Congress is done in committee. Joint committees, on the other hand, so these are going to include both representatives and senators. So the House and Senate both will be included on a joint committee. Standing committees, you have House standing committees and you have Senate standing committees, but they are totally separate from each other. There's no overlap. Joint committees, you have some representatives and some senators. The main type of joint committee, or the main example of one, is called a conference committee. Definitely highlight this. This one is commonly tested on. Conference committee, the purpose of them is to resolve differences in Senate and House versions of the same bill. In other words, sometimes it's possible that the House will pass one version of a bill and the Senate will pass the same bill, but it's going to be slightly different. So some of the details will be different. The president has to have one unified bill passed by both parties, have to pass the exact same bill in order for him to be able to sign or veto it. So when that happens, when the House passes one version, the Senate passes a different version, then they have to have a conference committee with senators and representatives, and then they can hopefully be able to compromise and be able to have one bill to send to the president. All right, we also have select or special committees. These are temporary for a specific purpose, and when that purpose is done, then they dissolve. So for instance, this picture here, it was from a special committee on steroids in baseball back in 2005. So Congress evidently felt like that was an important thing for them to be using their time on, and once they were done with that issue, that committee then disbanded. So these are temporary. All right, now a couple of examples of specific committees. We have one here. This is the House Rules Committee. They are the most powerful committee in Congress, the House Rules Committee. What they do is they review bills and make rules for debate. So they decide, let me be clear what they don't do. They don't edit the bill. They don't mark up the bill. They have nothing to do with changing the words that are in that bill. What they do, however, is they make rules as far as when it's debated on the floor. How is that debate going to take place? Is there going to be a time limit? You have this next term here, closed rule. It's a House bill that cannot be amended. So that's another question the House Rules Committee deals with, to decide whether or not that bill is going to be allowed to be amended or not. If it can't be amended, it's called a closed rule. If it can be amended, you guys can figure it out, it would be an open rule. So that's up to the House Rules Committee. So they have a lot of power. They can make it much tougher for bills to pass if they don't want them to pass, or they can make it much easier for them to pass if they do. Remember, the majority party, they control all of these committees. So this is a huge example of an advantage that the majority party has, is that they control the Rules Committee. So they're able to make it tough for their opponents' bills to pass and easier for their own bills to pass. Another example of a specific committee is the House Ways and Means Committee. Most of the committees, the names of them are very, very straightforward. You can see this one has been around since 1789. So again, that tells you this is a standing committee, so it is permanent, and you can see it's been around for 220 years basically. All tax and revenue bills are sent to this committee. So that's what this committee deals with, is all tax and revenue bills. So anything having to do with tax or revenue, revenue is a politician's word for taxes, all has to do with or goes through this committee, the House Ways and Means Committee. So they too are obviously very important. Another specific committee would be the Senate Judiciary Committee. And what the Senate Judiciary Committee does is they review and recommend the confirmation of judicial nominees. So when the president wants to appoint a judge, the president actually can't do that by himself. He has to nominate a federal judge. So he says, this is the person I think will do good at this job. He nominates that person, but then it's up to the Senate to actually confirm them. Before it goes to the entire Senate, where all 100 members have a chance to vote, it first goes to the Senate Judiciary Committee. And they, about 15 to 20 people, will review and recommend whether or not the Senate should confirm or not confirm those judicial nominees. So they have a lot of power too, directly influencing the president and his nominations for the courts. All right, committee chair, that's the leader. So the word chairman, it's like the leader of the committee. They are always from the majority party. So right now in the House, all of your committee chairs, you can see pictures of them, they are all from the Republican Party because Republicans are the majority party in the House. They are also usually the member with the most seniority on that committee from the majority party. They don't have to be, but generally, by and large, it means the person that has been on that committee the longest and is from the majority party, they will be the committee chairman, by and large. All right, so committee membership. In other words, what determines who gets on what committee? Because we have lots and lots of committees in your textbook. There's a list of them, tons and tons of different committees. So why do certain representatives end up on some and others go on different ones? Well, the basic idea is that many members of Congress, that we're talking about, they want to be on committees that help them gain prominence or get re-elected. So ones that either have to do with their constituents. So for instance, if you are from a state like Nebraska or Wyoming or Iowa, you probably want to be on an agricultural type of committee, or ones that help you gain prominence, like Paul Ryan here. He was the vice presidential candidate for Mitt Romney, and the way that he became known is because he is chairman of the House. Which one is it? It's either Ways and Means or it's Budget. I think it's House Ways and Means. I'm not going to re-record this though. I'll tell you in class which one. I'm pretty sure he was House Ways and Means. But either way, he was on a very prominent committee, and because of that, it helped him to gain prominence, and now a lot of people think that he could be the Republicans' candidate for president in 2016. So it's an example of being on a committee that helps get you noticed. Joe Biden was on the Foreign Affairs Committee for 30 years. So again, that was a prominent committee, helped him gain notice, and he ended up becoming vice president. All right, here's just a vocab term that has to do with this section: discharge petition. What can happen is if a bill is in committee, and as we're going to learn in this unit, most bills never make it out of committee. The vast majority of bills, they get sent to committee and they die there. They never get out. But if the majority of the House wants to force a bill out of committee because they want to vote on it, they have that power. And the way they do that is by issuing a discharge petition. So if a majority of House members, so 218 members, they can vote to force that committee to release the bill from committee, and then it can be brought to a vote for the whole floor. This is a procedural tactic. It doesn't occur very often, probably isn't the most important thing that we have.